The circumstances in which Sue Gray was hired as Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff in 2023 were murky to say the least. She was a senior civil servant who had been in charge of the Partygate investigations and reportedly involved in the probe into whether Boris Johnson had misled Parliament. Wouldn't you know it, but not long after Johnson was found culpable by both inquiries, she was offered a plum job with Labour. Her son Liam Conlon became a Labour parliamentary candidate, and when elected he got £10,000 in Lord Alley money to tide him over. It must have been a series of complete coincidences. Once in government, Gray was granted a salary of £170,000. She was to be paid by public money, not from the Labour Party coffers. Her salary was larger than that of the Prime Minister himself, £167,000. Other recent Chiefs of Staff did not manage this. Adjusted for inflation, Alistair Campbell and Jonathan Powell got £179,000 each, while PM Blair accepted £196,000. Nick Timothy and Fiona Hall got £188,000 each, while May got £193,000. Dominic Cummings received up to £179,000, while Johnson got £204,000. This detail of course made the headlines, causing consternation. Apparently, Labour figures had realised this would look bad and tried to head it off at the pass. Gray was asked to accept slightly less than Starmer, it is said, but she plain refused. She didn't earn her money. Starmer's rocky start was marked by riots across the country, the disastrous PR from cutting the heating allowance and letting out prisoners, and the scandal over gifts and donations. On the latter point, it was alleged Lord Alley's security pass had been authorised by Gray. The common denominator in all of these issues was poor communication and party discipline, both aspects within Gray's remit. Worse than this, Gray apparently tried to ice out her rival Morgan McSweeney, the other key advisor in Labour who now has her job. Worse still, in an act of heresy, she supposedly influenced Starmer to ignore the instructions of Tony Blair. Within days, they decided not to go with Tone's beloved digital ID, and they then refused to commit to massive AI development, which he was also pushing. Blair would not have been happy about this, especially as Starmer was making such a hash of everything else. Some claim Gray was defenestrated by the shadowy machinations of the scorned ex-leader. Many stormtroopers were celebrating the resignation of the head of the civil service, Simon Case. They considered him an ally of the Conservatives, despite behaviour pointing to the contrary. He left the post on health grounds. In what now seems like a deliciously ironic moment, one of Jess Phillips' employees tweeted out, "In a quiet office, Sue Gray pours herself a whiskey and looks out over St James's Park. A smile plays over her lips." Mere days after this cringy prose, Gray herself resigned on October the 6th. One gets the feeling it was not exactly voluntary. The same stormtroopers who had defended Starmer's dodgy-looking appointment of Gray were now saying what a masterful substitution, demotion, he'd made. It was not, of course, an act of weakness or desperation, casting his first 100 days in a poor light. No doubt if his new setup fails to work, and he has to U-turn again, he will continue to be masterful. Hilariously, it has now emerged there has been no substitution at all. At first it was announced Gray had been given some made-up new job in charge of overseeing devolution, dubbed Envoy to the Nations and Regions. Bizarrely, there was an inaugural event of the Council of the Nations and Regions in Scotland on October the 10th, but Gray was not present. Starmer, of course, would not comment on this fact. There was talk that Gray was demanding too much money, and there was no more official information as to what the role was or when it would start. On the 12th of November, Number 10 confirmed the job offer had been withdrawn because Gray had now decided not to take it up. That's likely code for "we got rid of her." It is a great shame Starmer appears to have realised, in a rare moment of wisdom, how toxic she was. Perhaps Gray is not so upset about the situation, given that she will likely get a generous severance package from her short stint, and probably has a good pension lined up. There is even talk that she will be put into the Lords. Guido Fawkes reported, take with a pinch of salt, that she has been heard boasting about it. From Labour's point of view, it is for the best Grey has gone, because she had, as she said in her resignation letter, become a distraction. In an interview 2 days before she quit, Boris Johnson invoked her several times, reigniting negative discussion about Grey. If she'd have continued, everything she did would go on to remind us of her suspicious appointment, and she was rubbing people up the wrong way inside and outside of Labour. Grey fans painted the whole situation as a right-wing media witch hunt. They refused to accept there had been any wrongdoing at all, that it was all a conspiracy theory. They also refused to acknowledge, or perhaps they were unable to see, that internal Labour power struggles had a hand in pushing her out. Our old friend misogyny was also to blame, of course. It's always someone else's fault.